Under the cold silence of space, a place where stars glittered like ancient, watchful eyes, something happened that should have been impossible. The Volari fleet, known across the galaxy as the oldest and most advanced civilization in the Orion Arm, had gathered at the edge of a nameless asteroid field. Their purpose was simple: to observe a primitive species called humans. The Volari expected nothing. Humans were barely out of their own atmosphere a century ago. They still burned chemical fuel in their rockets, still used metal ships instead of living bioships like the rest of the galaxy. But now, something strange had been detected. A massive energy spike had erupted from Earth, far stronger than anything a pre-warp world should be able to generate. It lasted only a fraction of a second, but the readings made even the Volari elders whisper in unease. The flagship Virith's crown floated in the darkness, its silver hull shimmering under starlight. Inside the observation chamber, Elder Commander Thalrus stood in silence, his four thin eyes locked on the swirling hologram of Earth. That energy output rivals our planetary defense cannons, whispered his second-in-command. Thalrus didn't answer at first. He simply tapped one clawed finger against the display, magnifying the region where the anomaly originated, an abandoned desert in what humans called Nevada. They call it a test, he murmured, translating. Intercepted human broadcasts? But no weapon of that size should exist on a world without warp capability. In the human world below, the desert was quiet except for the soft whine of generators. The United Earth Defense Council had gathered in secret around a long steel table inside an underground command bunker. On the table lay a small black box, an activation key for the most ambitious and dangerous project humanity had ever attempted, Project Aegis. Around them, the room hummed with tension. Engineers, military officers, and scientists stood at attention, their faces pale under harsh fluorescent light. General Marcus Hale, a man whose sharp voice could cut through steel, spoke without ceremony. Gentlemen and ladies, this is not just a test. This is a message. In orbit, dozens of alien listening posts were already scrambling to analyze what was about to happen. For centuries, humanity had been left alone because of the Galactic Accorda Treaty forbidding advanced civilizations from interfering with primitive species. Earth was considered too unimportant, too far from trade. Lanes too young to be a threat. But the moment humanity showed they could generate power on par with interstellar weapons, they would no longer be ignored. Some races would seek to recruit them. Others would seek to destroy them. In the desert, the weapons stood like a steel. Beast over 2 kilometers long, a massive railgun barrel mounted on reinforced towers, its base buried deep into the rock. It did not look elegant like alien designs. It was raw, ugly, and heavy, its every surface built for function over beauty. Cables as thick as trees snaked into underground reactors. The weapon's creators called it the Spear of Dawn. Its purpose: to hurl a tungsten slug at unimaginable velocity, using electromagnetic acceleration to achieve speeds no projectile had ever reached before. But the real secret wasn't the size, it was the energy source. The Volari scientists watching from orbit were the first to realize the terrifying truth. The readings are wrong, one stammered. That's not nuclear. As he stopped, his voice trembling. 0-point energy. 0-point technology was considered forbidden in the galaxy. By civilizations with thousands of years of engineering experience, the smallest miscalculation could tear a hole in reality. And yet, these humans, barely a century into spaceflight, had built one. Inside the bunker, General Hale inserted the key into the launch console. The engineers double-checked the superconducting rails, the capacitor arrays, the targeting systems. Somewhere deep inside the weapon, an energy chamber began to glow with a cold blue light. The slug, a 3-ton cylinder of hardened tungsten, sat at the far end of the barrel, waiting for the magnetic fields to awaken. The countdown began. 10-9. The air seemed to thicken. Even the Volari fleet, millions of kilometers away, turned all sensors toward Earth. 8, 7. In every corner of the galaxy, scattered listening stations were picking up the energy buildup. 6-5. The valorous elder whispered, "If they fire this, they will change everything." 4-3. The desert trembled as magnetic coils began to scream under the strain. The sky above shimmered faintly as heat rose from the railgun's barrel. 2-1. The world exploded into light. The slug tore through the barrel with a soundless burst, accelerating so fast that it blurred into invisibility. For a moment, the air around the barrel warped like rippling water. Then the projectile vanished into the upper atmosphere, punching through layers of air faster than any object in human history. The force left a white-hot trail across the sky, one that could be seen from orbit. On the Valari flagship, every alarm went off. The projectile's speed was impossible. The sensors tracked it, leaving Earth's gravity well and continuing into space without losing momentum. It crossed the distance to the asteroid field in less than 5 minutes, striking a target rock. The size of a small city, the impact vaporized it instantly, scattering molten debris into the void. The galaxy now knew. The Valari elders stood in silence, staring at the destruction. Humanity had just demonstrated a weapon that could reach interstellar distances in minutes and hit with the force of a planetary bombardment cannon. Thalru finally spoke, his voice almost reverent. "They have taken their first step, and the galaxy will never be the same." In the human bunker, cheers erupted. But outside those steel walls, deep in the black silence of space, dozens of alien fleets were already changing course toward Earth. Some came with offers of alliance. Others came with weapons primed. Humanity's shot had been heard across the stars and the universe was listening. When the railgun's slug tore through the darkness of space, it was not only the metal that traveled, it was a message. The kind of message that could not be ignored. Across hundreds of light years, deep space listening stations picked up the faint ripples of the shot. The sensors in the Valorian relay outpost screamed with warnings as energy readings spiked beyond their calibrated limits. Captain Thrak of the Valorian Guard stared at the readings with disbelief. This is not possible," he muttered, his voice trembling. The energy output matched that of an antimatter blast, yet the signature was pure kinetic force. No radiation, no exotic particles. To the trained eyes of alien militaries, it was like watching a predator they never knew existed suddenly roar for the first time. And that roar carried a message no one wanted to hear. Humans had crossed a line. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session within hours. Hundreds of alien delegates floated, crawled, or walked into the Grand Chamber. The air was tense, thick with unspoken fear. Chairperson L3 of the Sure Confederacy slammed a clawed hand against the stone table. "This weapon violates the stability accords," she hissed. "No member species is allowed a kinetic system of this scale without review." Across the table, the ambassador from the Rigan Empire leaned forward, his 3 eyes unblinking. "And yet humans are not members," he said coldly. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Everyone knew the truth. Earth had never officially joined the Galactic Council. They had kept their independence, trading lightly, exploring slowly. Many saw them as harmless latecomers to the galactic stage. Now, that image had been shattered. The Council's analysts calculated that if this railgun was mounted on a warship, it could pierce the armor of any dreadnought in a single shot. No shields could stop it. No defense systems could react in time. Meanwhile, back on Earth's Luna base, the railgun crew watched their test results scroll across the monitors. Lieutenant Sarah Vega allowed herself a small smile, though her eyes were sharp with awareness. "Ouch. We just made history," she whispered. Commander Hayes, a man who carried the weight of too many secrets, didn't smile back. "History makes enemies," he replied. The crew didn't know the half of it. This weapon had been developed in silence, far from the eyes of the galaxy. Funding came from hidden channels, research cloaked under the guise of asteroid mining. It wasn't just power for the sake of power, it was a shield. Born from the growing suspicion that Earth's days of being ignored were numbered. But now that the shot had been fired, even as a test, every major power in the galaxy would know. And some of them would come. The first to respond was the Vraxis Dominion, species that had fought wars over far less provocation. Their high strategist issued a public broadcast. The human world is now a destabilizing force. They will not dismantle this weapon. We will dismantle it for them. The statement was followed by the movement of several Dominion fleets. Toward Sol's outer rim, the galactic news net lit up with debates, speculations, and thinly veiled panic. Some called for preemptive strikes. Others argued that attacking humans might be the last mistake anyone ever made. Civilian freighters began avoiding human space altogether, as rumors of a planet-killer weapon spread, but far away. In a small listening post orbiting the cold, dim star of Drometh 7, a lone Zaylan scientist leaned back from her console. Stunned, she had seen something in the Railgun's data burst, something no one else had noticed. Hidden within the kinetic signature was a faint, deliberate modulation. It wasn't random noise. It was a signal, encoded with mathematical precision. A message from humans, not just a demonstration of force. And when she began to decode it, her scales tightened in fear. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was something stranger. The humans were inviting someone. The fleets came slowly at first, like shadows crawling closer across the endless black. At the edge of Sol's heliosphere, where sunlight was nothing more than a cold glimmer, the first Dominion warships arrived. Their hulls were jagged and sharp, designed to intimidate as much as to destroy. Behind them, more ships followed, carriers, escorts, and armored siege platforms that could flatten a moon. In the command room of Earth's orbital defense network, every radar sweep brought more red marks onto the screen. Admiral Juno Carver stood with her arms crossed, watching in silence. Round her, young officers spoke in tense voices, passing updates and requesting orders. But Juno knew rushing into action would be a mistake. The Dominion wanted Earth to panic. They wanted humans to fire first. And yet deep inside, she also knew something else. Humanity was not as unprepared as the galaxy believed in the underground. Levels of Luna Base, behind reinforced blast doors, work crews swarmed over a massive, half-completed structure. It looked like a railgun, but its scale dwarfed the one used in the test. The barrel stretched so far that it disappeared into the shadows, built into the very bedrock of the moon. The engineers called it Titan's Spine. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it was humanity's real answer to the galaxy's threats. The test shot had been more than proof of concept, it was bait. Commander Hayes stood on the catwalk, looking down at the work. His voice was low but steady as he spoke to Lieutenant Vega. Every hour they get closer, we get closer to being. Ready? We don't have to win. Just have to show them we can't lose. Vega nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She had seen the decoded message from the first Railgun test, the strange hidden signal. No one had explained it to her. But she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just the Dominion fleets they had to worry about. Something else was coming. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, was in chaos. Reports of Dominion fleet movements had triggered emergency alliances, with several species pledging support for Earth not out of friendship, but out of fear of the Dominion's growing aggression. Yet others secretly encouraged the attack, hoping to see both the humans and Dominion bleed. Information wars erupted. Propaganda claimed the human railgun could split planets in half. Some said Earth had hidden dozens of them around the solar system. None of it was true yet. But the most disturbing whispers came from the Zaylan, scientist on Drometh 7. Her partially decoded signal from the railgun test was spreading through back channels. She claimed it was a call, not to any galactic race, to something older, something that existed beyond the borders of known space. The few who believed her were terrified. The Dominion fleet crossed the Kuiper Belt, their flagship, Blood Tide, opened a channel to Earth's Defense Command. The alien warlord's face appeared, scales glistening under the cold light. Surrender the railgun and dismantle all research facilities, he demanded, or we will reduce your world to dust. Admiral Carver stared at him without blinking. You've come a long way, she said quietly, and you still don't understand what you're walking into. The channel cut, crossed the fleet, weapons powered up. In the darkness between Neptune and Uranus, humanity's hidden outposts stirred to life, readying weapons no alien had yet seen. For now, Earth stood silent. But the sky was darkening, and every soldier, every engineer, every civilian in the Sol system felt the same thing. The first shot could come at any second. The shadow finally stopped moving. It hung in the darkness just beyond the lunar defense grid, a silent, impossible wall that seemed to breathe. Hayes could feel the weight of it, pressing against his chest, even though it was still thousands of kilometers away. The Dominion ships floated in tense formation, their bright hulls looking like toy models next to the living void before them. For the first time in recorded history, the Dominion's guns were not aimed at humans. They were aimed outward, toward the same enemy. But the thing didn't fire, didn't speak, it only waited. And in that stillness, the entire solar system seemed to hold its breath. The Titan's spine railgun was fully charged now. Blue-white arcs danced across its coils like trapped lightning. Every instinct told Hayes to fire, but every deeper, older instinct told him that shooting would be like throwing a stone at a sleeping giant. Command channels lit up with arguments. Human admirals, Dominion warlords, all shouting over one another, none willing to make the first move. Then a single transmission cut through the noise. It wasn't human. It wasn't Dominion. It was the shadow. No one could translate the sound. But it wasn't words. It was like the groan of a mountain, the low moan of tectonic plates grinding. And somehow, everyone who heard it understood. The shot they fired had been a call. The caller had better have a reason. Hayes realized the terrible truth. The railgun's hypervelocity round had torn a hole through more than enemy armor. It had punched into the thin barrier between their reality and something older, deeper. The thing was not here for war. It was here to see who dared. And if it didn't like what it found, Hayes imagined planets being erased like chalk on a blackboard. The Dominion flagship broke position, gliding slowly forward, its admiral risking direct contact. Hayes knew this was suicide, but he also knew they had no choice but to show strength. He gave the order to match the move. Human and Dominion ships advanced together, side by side, their weapons locked, their shields layered. For what felt like an eternity, the shadow remained still. Then, slowly, it began to drift backward, as if losing interest. The stars reappeared behind it. The crushing pressure in Hayes's chest eased. No one dared speak until it was gone. But even after it vanished into the black, the crew knew the truth. The galaxy had just seen a glimpse of something far beyond empires and wars, and it had seen them. The Dominion comes first, their admiral's voice low, almost human. "We are not allies," he said. "But today we are not. Enemies." Hayes stood at the viewport, watching the empty dark where the shadow had been. Somewhere out there, it was still moving, still listening, and one day when humans fired again, it might come back for an answer. For hours, both sides hung in silence. The Dominion fleet held position just inside Saturn's orbit, their ships glowing faintly against the void, like predators waiting for the right moment to strike. On Luna Base, Commander Hayes stood before the main targeting display, his eyes fixed on the red cluster of enemy signatures. Every calculation, every firing solution had been checked a dozen times. Titan's spine, the railgun hidden beneath the moon's surface, was charged to full capacity, the coils humming so powerfully that the very ground vibrated. Inside the firing chamber, the projectile rested, a sleek black dart of tungsten. Alloy wrapped in layers of experimental plating. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a message. He knew that once they fired, there was no turning back. Humanity would either rise or burn. The Dominion moved first. Without warning, one of their siege platforms launched a spear of plasma the size of a city block toward Earth's orbital defense grid. Sirens screamed across every station. In less than a second, defense lasers cut through the void, intercepting the blast, but the shockwave rippled across the system. That was all Hayes needed. "Fire," he said. The word was quiet almost. Calm, but in the control room, it hit like thunder. The magnetic coils screamed as power surged through them, and then release. The projectile tore from the barrel at a fraction of light speed, a silent flash that crossed millions of kilometers. In seconds, the enemy didn't even have time to react. On the Dominion flagship's bridge, alarms erupted as the projectile struck their lead dreadnought dead center. There was no explosion, no fireball. The ship simply came apart, ripped in half by a raw kinetic force, its pieces drifting into silent clouds of debris. Across the system, the shock was immediate. Dominion captains barked orders, scrambling to form new lines. But it wasn't just the destruction of the dreadnought that froze them. It was the aftermath. From the point of impact, strange distortions rippled outward, faint but visible, like heat shimmering in the cold of space. Sensors across both fleets detected an energy pattern unlike anything in known galactic databases. Hayes watched the readings with a tight jaw. He'd seen something similar once before during the test shot that had sparked all this. But this time, the signal wasn't faint. It was loud. It was moving. Somewhere in the deep black, beyond the mapped edges of the Milky Way, something had heard it. The Dominion retaliated instantly, their ships pouring fire into the outer defense stations. Earth's orbit lit up with energy beams and railgun counterfire. Every ship, every crew member fought as if the next second might be their last. On Mars, missile silos opened, launching swarms of smart warheads into the chaos. Lunabase prepared Titan's spine for a second shot, but Hayes hesitated. The distortion in space was growing stronger, like invisible waves pressing against reality itself. He didn't know what was coming, but instinct told him it wasn't on anyone's side, and yet the Dominion pressed forward, determined to crush Earth before whatever answered that signal arrived. The first shot had changed everything. Now, the question wasn't just whether humanity could survive the Dominion, it was whether the galaxy could survive what was on its way. The battlefield over Saturn was chaos, ships burning in silent explosions, trails of plasma carving through the dark. But above the noise of war, every sensor on every ship, human and Dominion, began picking up the same signal. It wasn't a weapon blast. It wasn't even directed at them. It was deeper, heavier, like the heartbeat of something enormous. At first it was faint, pulsing in slow intervals. Then, each minute it grew louder. Hayes stood at the command console, eyes locked on the deep space feed. The distortion wave from Titan's spine shot had traveled far, but something had sent an answer back. And now that something was coming in the cold black between galaxies, shadow began to form, not a ship, not anything in the Dominion's or humanity's archives. It moved without visible engines, without thrusters, almost like it was swimming through space. Even at extreme magnification, its surface looked wrong, shifting, alive, made of patterns that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at them. The Dominion's flagship broke come silence first, transmitting a desperate encrypted channel to Earth's command. "We do not know what this is. We recommend immediate ceasefire." Hayes almost laughed at the irony. Been enemies. Now the galaxy's most feared empire was asking for cooperation, but his smile faded fast. The thing was accelerating then. Without warning, the shadow sent out a pulse. Every ship's power dropped for 3 full seconds. Lights flickered, engines coughed, targeting systems went blind. It wasn't an attack in the normal sense. It was more like it had looked at them, and reality had struggled to keep working under that gaze. The Dominion's rear formation panicked, breaking into retreat. But the thing ignored them. Its focus was fixed on Luna Base, on Titan's spine. Hayes felt his chest tighten. It hadn't just heard the railgun shot. It had recognized it. The humans had accidentally spoken in a language no one understood, and they had said something that had drawn this ancient listener. On every screen, it grew larger, darker, blotting out the stars behind it. Whatever it was, it dwarfed the largest ships in the system. The railgun's coils were already charging again, but Hayes wasn't sure if firing would save them or doom them faster. Around him, the crew whispered in terror, though no one could explain why. It was an instinct, like seeing a predator you'd never encountered before, but knowing instantly it was built to kill. Dominion ships formed a wall between the shadow and the moon, but deep down, Hayes suspected it wouldn't matter. The galaxy had just shifted into a new kind of war, one that neither humanity nor the Dominion had ever prepared for. And all because of one shot.